In light of recent activities in the United States, we have decided to do a podcast on personal responsibility and the levels of accountability that one can take for themselves. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Guten Morgen.
Good morning, fellow podcast listeners. This is Lotus, and with me in the studio is...
Quick, Carl.
So we've got a couple of rambunctious, four-legged fellas in the studio with us today. But we did get a studio upgrade, didn't we, Quick Carl?
We did, and it's pretty exciting. We're getting to the big time now.
We are getting to the big time now. We're flying in a special guest next month. We upgraded to 2 microphones now, though we're in a crappier part of the neighborhood, aren't we?
Yeah, sort of.
Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about the personal responsibility and accountability, and part of the change. I know that a lot of the YouTube, not YouTube listeners, but a lot of the listeners that we have that I talked to, they were asking about the next episode, and I told them customer service. We're going to save customer service, I think, either for next week or the week after. But since customer service is my choice, it's not your choice, so we'll do one that Quick Carl chooses for next week. But we just so we were watching on the news yesterday with the YouTube incident that's going on at the YouTube HQ. And while I don't necessarily agree with everything that YouTube does or YouTube's policies, I don't have any ill will against anybody. And so I think that's why we decided to shift gears a little bit and go with a more deeper podcast, I'd say, for rather than talking about customer service, because customer service we can talk about that anytime. But with Parkland happening recently, and Sandy Hook, and all these different tragedies and things like that, I just think that there's a certain amount of personal responsibility that has to go a long way. But before we get to this, we do want to do the mailbag, right?
Right.
We did have a listener contact us this week. Listener Tyler says, "Hello, Socratic neighbors. I would like to talk to you about travel. Thanks, listener Tyler." So he said very respectfully, listener Tyler. So
Can you say that again?
Respectfully.
Thank you.
Respectfully, listener Tyler. So Tyler, you should be getting your airline ticket in the mail here shortly. I believe that Quick Carl has already arranged your flight to our studio.
I've arranged something.
So anyway, that's pretty fun. So if you want to email us corrections or comments or concerns that you might have, please email us at socraticneighbors@gmail.com. Again, that is socraticneighbors@gmail.com. All one word, Socratic Neighbors. No spaces, no underscores. And if you don't know how to spell Socratic, then
Look it up.
Just like all the facts that we feed you, look them up. Okay, so moving on to personal responsibility. I just think that while there's a certain amount of mental instability in the country, I also think that there is a certain point where the onus is on you to make a decision to do something like that. And again, I don't wish ill will. There are times I don't wish ill will on anybody as far as death, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't want them to get what's coming for them. But at the same time, that's not for me to decide that if they should get, because with the Bible, I mean, it's very eye for an eye, which doesn't actually mean you take out somebody's eye, therefore your eye gets taken out. The whole idea of eye for an eye is that to the punishment fits the crime, and so I think there's a certain amount of responsibility that one has to take upon themselves to decide to do something like that, and I think it's their fault that they decide to do something like that. We're getting into a multitude of factors here. We're not just talking about mental illness or causation or anything like that. We're talking about several factors that go into a decision like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And then also, um, yeah, I mean, people are responsible for what they do, but then again, sometimes not so much, because I, I, I'm not condoning anything that goes down, like the thing with YouTube yesterday, or Las Vegas, or the nightclub down in Miami, or this Parkland school shooting. Um, I mean, those people made a decision to do what they did. However, I will say this: uh, if you're a sane person, you probably would have made that decision either. And you have to think about this. There's there's got to be some kind of connect that put you over the edge, or maybe you do have mental problems. Maybe there are issues that you don't have control over. Maybe you could have gotten help. People may have noticed something about you that could have helped, but it's just that. To give you an example, I'll just give you an example, and this goes back a long way. But since we're broadcasting from the Lone Star State, um, Charles Whitman and the shootings from the bell tower in Austin. Okay, that was very tragic, and he left a note that said, "When I die, and I'm planning on dying today, of the day of the shooting, I need you to take my brain out and examine it." So they did. They did an autopsy and took his brain out, and they found that he had a tumor in an area that causes the type of things that he was doing. He knew he had a problem. Now he didn't act on it. Instead, he acted in an irresponsible way, and went out and shot a bunch of people. So he could have taken a different route, but the fact was, he didn't. He may not have had control as far as being responsible enough to say, "I'm not going to do this today," because he had other issues going on that were factors in his decision.
Right, and that when with a tumor like that and undiagnosed or something like that, I think that there's a certain amount of there's a certain amount of personal responsibility on the people around him as well to notice that type of behavior.
Right.
And you particularly see that with the Parkland shooting. The Parkland shooting is a big example of numerous areas of failure. You know, you look at the law enforcement failure to not respond to the mother or his neighbors.
Yeah, the FBI was even called,
And
and it didn't do anything.
The FBI was called twice on this guy and
Yeah,
didn't do anything.
yeah. And the police had stayed outside the school. I
Yeah.
mean, if Columbine hasn't taught the police department anything, you don't wait.
Right. And that's there's a big thing with that. And then there was a shooting not long after that the police resource officer, I forget where it happened, but the police resource officer went in and saved everybody. He went in, shot the guy, stopped it. Only 2 people were injured. Nobody else was injured. It's just the suspect was dead, and then the two people injured. That's it. And so I think there's also responsibility not just on the person that decides to do the action. There is a certain amount of personal responsibility on the people around them to take action, and it's a lot of it is the bystander effect. I think that you don't, oh well, that's not really a problem, and I think we're getting into, personally, I think we're getting into uncharted territory as far as what's going on in the country with all these different incidents occurring. We're in uncharted territory, and the media has a right. The media and the press have a right to cover this stuff because sometimes this is information that people need to know. But also at the same time, I also think it glorifies it to a certain extent as well.
I
I think
totally agree on
because
that.
you can inadvertently create more instances of, oh well, that person was able to do it and live through it. I should be able to do it too. And it's now there's like a big push by the defense attorney of the Parkland shooter to not even get the death penalty, and it's like, we got that guy of anything, that guy deserves it, and it's unfortunate that people don't think about that. Oh, well, you should make him think about it for the rest of his life. It's like, but at a certain point, there's a certain amount of cost, and like I said before, it's to the punishment fit the crime, and that's what that to me is what he deserves. But I guess that's up for the jury.
Getting back to what you just said about somebody that should get the death penalty. I believe it was over in Sweden, that guy that blew up those buildings and killed 8 people and then went on an island and killed another 75 people. That guy's only going to get like 21 years. That's it.
That's insane.
It is insane. This guy killed, over 80 people or more, and he's only going to get 21 years. That's the maximum that they can give him.
That's terrible.
So I don't know.
Is it 21 years because of the particular incident?
No. That's the maximum that whole country can give for that crime.
So they don't, because it's in Sweden, right? You said
right,
so. There's no death penalty in Sweden.
No, and the maximum sentence is 21 years. Now, Jeez. I could see they gave him 21 years for each
offense,
and then he wouldn't get out. But
yeah,
no, the whole thing is 21 years.
Because
honestly, if somebody I know or a relative got killed by him, he wouldn't see the light of day.
Right.
And then we'd be replacing it. Because the way I look at it, if I shot and killed him, then I'm going to be only in there for 21 years, and then I'm going to get out.
Yeah.
So why worry about it?
Right. Right. Yeah, because if you put it's not a RICO, because a RICO case is multiple people accused at the same time for the same crime. Whereas, because you can, is it consecutive or conglomerate terms or something like that? Where I don't know the legal. I don't know the legal terminology for it.
Well, yeah, they usually enforce the RICO Act for like racketeering and that.
Yeah. But well, I mean, like Murder on the Orient Express, where they all did it. Yeah. Like that's a RICO case. You know what I mean? Like, because you don't necessarily know which knife stab. I mean, they all committed They all committed aggravated assault, but you don't necessarily know, particularly back then, which particular person did the last stab, which determined his death. So in that instance, since they all conspire, there's conspiracy to commit murder, and then murder in the third degree, because it's because of the level of planning. Murder in the third degree. I believe that's what it is. But anyway, I could be wrong. But we're getting off topic here. But I don't know, man. I don't think it's. I just there's a lot of people that don't understand, and Prager made this point that a lot of people don't have a good set of values to fall back on that would prevent them from making a decision like this. And that's another thing is that at what point does mental instability and your values intersect? And I think that if you have a good set of values, like you value life, you value your neighbor, you value your fellow man, I mean, you're far less likely to commit something like this versus if you don't. And a lot of these people, they're not. I mean, with the exception of the Vegas shooter, I mean, they're not older. They're not even older than me, and so they're on the younger side, and so they either haven't been taught or the values hasn't sunk in.
I think there's a support disconnect within their family and circle of people that they're in. A lot of these people are loners,
right?
They've gotten away from the system. So now everything that happens to them, it's in their head. They've put it there, or they get paranoid, or they think everyone's out to get them. And I can understand that. Some of us have demons, and some of us don't. But we all got a little bit that manifest, and when it gets too bad, that's what I think sends some of these people over the edge. And
Yeah.
right, so I agree that they need to be responsible for what their actions, and if they perform those actions, they're still responsible, even if they have mental issues or like the brain thing. They still have to be punished for the crime that they committed, no matter what.
Correct.
But but I don't know how you fix it. I mean, we're always going to have these problems. We're always going to have people going into a like YouTube and shooting people. And I mean, there's no way to. You're not safe anywhere. It's just no way to stop it.
Right.
So all you can do is just keep studying every situation and hopefully getting things changed. And it's not necessarily trying to change laws that are ineffective anyway.
Right.
So I think it's more clinical studies that might help people in the future, even law enforcement and people or general people like us, to recognize these issues, and then there needs to be stuff in place to help that person right away. Like if I observe you writing down in a notebook like a diagram of a building, that's going to make me suspicious.
Right.
So, and then I mean, if you got a terrorist handbook or something,
Yeah.
that will,
Manifesto.
right, yeah, right. That's gonna
Well, I mean,
yeah, it's kind of like that book, hostage terrorist hostage.
yeah, but I mean, you talk about stuff like that, like because Mrs. Lotus has a diary, and it's not and she has a diary because it's hard for her to get out of a feedback loop. Wait, not a dog to finish scratching. Okay, he's done. So Mrs. Lotus has issues with talking about stuff like that, has issues with getting stuff out of her head because she dwells on things, and a lot of people do. I dwell on things
I do
sometimes.
too sometimes, sure.
And so the way she gets out of it, because there's a certain way that people get out of it. I get out of it by playing some video games and playing with friends and hanging out with buddies and doing the podcast, and that's how I get out of the dwelling on it.
Alcohol.
lots and lots of. No, just kidding. And that's how but she gets out of it by writing in a diary. She gets out of it by talking to her friends, and so but I also know there's also a shift in behavior patterns, and if you saw me suddenly start writing in a diary, you might ask me why.
Yeah.
Because I don't write in a diary, but if I suddenly started writing in a diary or a journal and I started you caught some sort of glimpse of it, you're going to start asking questions, because that's a shift in behavior for you to see me to do that, or Mrs. Lotus to see me to do
right.
that.
And then a lot depends on what your reaction would be if I did do that, and you could get confrontational. It's like you didn't need to see that, or what are you
Right.
asking? What are you talking about? Or this is real innocent. You could have that. But I was getting back to before with that same situation. There's got to be stuff in place so that if I notice that, I know how to get a hold of someone that can help you. Not necessarily law enforcement, but
Right.
but some hotline. Like they have suicide hotlines. There should be a hotline that you can call when you have suspicions about a way a person's acting, or that's not normal, or it could cause this, or there's something wrong with this person. And then they'll have stuff in place that they can go maybe send somebody out to talk to this guy or check on it, or they can do a run a thing, and if they see if he's ever had any other problems in the past.
Right. And that's why I'm all for I'm a pro Second Amendment guy, but I'm all for gun restraining orders. And gun restraining orders are just a law that if a family member or a neighbor or a friend, someone close to a particular individual, can prove beyond reasonable doubt that this person is mentally unstable and mentally unfit to handle that particular right, because these are rights, and you're dealing with somebody's rights, so to temporarily take away from them until they are mentally fit to do something like that. I'm all for a gun restraining order that, you'd have to constantly prove that this person is mentally unstable, and that's why it would fall on a family member or somebody close to that person. It can't just be some random guy that, it has to be somebody that is rather involved in their life.
Yeah, oh yeah. They would know the situation more.
Right, and that's like Sutherland Springs, like that guy. There was clear, obvious situations where like the law enforcement completely missed. Those people around him completely missed putting it into the registry. He shouldn't have been able to do all that. Thank God for Stephen Williford for doing something about it. It's really it's
getting back on the recent shooting though and the responsibility. Let me ask you this. Let me throw this out there. So we live in a state that you can get a concealed weapon permit.
Right.
Okay. So let's say the person, even though this happened in California, the person goes into YouTube and shoots people, and you work there and you have a concealed weapon. Is it your responsibility to shoot them and kill them so that nobody else gets shot? Is that put on you? Because like now you're in a situation where like, oh, hey, that guy Lotus had a concealed weapon permit and didn't even pull his gun out to stop her.
There would be very significant questions to that. And
is that your responsibility or not?
Yeah, it is. I'd say it is because it's it's very hard to put somebody in it's very hard to convict somebody, but it's the Good Samaritan effect. If you are able to do something, you should do something. And there are like in Texas, I think it's in Texas, or there's a bunch of states that if a doctor is able to, if somebody is in need and like if somebody breaks their arm or if somebody's bleeding and a doctor is around and they know how to stop the bleeding and all that stuff and they don't do it, then they can be charged potentially.
When I lived in Colorado, my wife was an RN.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, Colorado state law, if you got hurt and my wife was there, she can't touch you.
Right.
Because of the state law, they can come back and sue her because she's a trained medical person if something didn't happen right. By law, I'm supposed to help you, and I have no training.
Yeah.
So I can't be sued because that's just the Good Samaritan law in Colorado. But if a medical person who has training and could save your life touches you, you're liable for a lawsuit.
That's silly. It's
the stupidest thing ever. Are you going to sit there and let a person die because I know how to save them, but I'm not allowed to touch them? And then you'll have me touch you, and I have no clue on what to do for you.
Right. It seems silly. It's just a bit silly to me.
Yeah, I mean that's a responsibility too. As far as it's just the right thing to do. Let's put it that way.
It is the right thing to do.
You would try to help someone, no matter if you didn't know them or did know, and it's just the way you should do it. It's just like anything. You have a responsibility, but it's not necessarily wrong if you don't take that responsibility. Society will judge you on your actions, on what if you took the responsibility of taking a shooter out because you had a weapon or saving someone's life because they needed and you were there, and if you don't do it, does that necessarily make you a bad person?
I don't think it makes you a bad person. People might call you a coward, but I don't think it because that's what
you're right about that. They will,
because I mean, like the Parkland shooter situation, like that cop did nothing. You know what I mean?
And that was his job.
It's his job. It's his job. That's my point. That it's his job to do something, and he didn't do it. And so I don't fault somebody that's got a concealed carry permit that doesn't do anything in a situation like that. But when it's your job to do something like that, when you're paid by the taxpayer to do something like that, when you're paid by the taxpayer to guarantee safety, and you don't, then there's a problem. I have a problem with that.
Okay, and I agree with what you're saying. The thing with the concealed weapon, though,
that doesn't preclude though from calling that person that has a concealed carry a coward.
Right. No, I understand. I mean, you may not be comfortable in a situation like I'm not in a position to take the guy out or the woman out that's shooting because even though I have a weapon, I'm just not able to get to. I don't have a clear shot, or I'm trying to protect these other people, and I don't want to give my position away or something.
Right.
So, but. You've got to think about it like this. If somebody has a concealed weapon permit, they know how to use the gun. They
Right.
want to use that gun if they have to. Nobody's going to get a concealed weapon permit and say I don't plan on ever using this. And if the situation comes up where I do have to use it, I wouldn't have applied for the permit to begin with, but if I didn't think
Right, and
I
the
was going to
concealed
use it,
carry is
it'd be dumb to get one.
yeah.
It'd be dumb to get a concealed weapon
If you
permit.
don't want, if
If
you
you're
don't,
never going to use it,
if-
then why would you apply for one?
right, you're coming at it from an insurance perspective. I don't want
Yeah.
to use this, but if I
Well,
will,
sure,
if I
that's
have
okay.
to.
I mean, I wouldn't want to ever pull it out if I don't have to. But the thing is, the minute you decided you wanted to get it, in your mind you'd have to say, if push came to shove, then I would use it. But if you're not ever going to feel comfortable in that position, then don't apply for the gun.
Right, right, and that's what the training and all that stuff is
Right,
for,
right.
is
Sure,
to
sure,
prepare
sure.
for something like that. Well, and that's why I like companies like USCCA, where they provide insurance if you ever fire it. Like so.
Right, right.
I
As far as the Second Amendment, you know, we should have the Second Amendment. We should have the right to
yes, yeah.
to have arms. I do have a problem with like that bumper stock in the Las Vegas shooting where the bullets just keep flying out. I have a problem with something like that being legal.
Yeah,
Well, not necessarily legal. It's just like a clip that holds 30 rounds of ammo, and that's insane to have a clip that holds that many rounds.
well,
I don't have a problem with the
clip-
military having these things. I have no problem at all with the military because we need whatever we need to defend ourselves and to fight. Our troops should have the best possible weapons.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not saying it should be legal for regular citizens to have those weapons. I mean, are you gonna have a cannon or a howitzer in your backyard just because you should be able to buy one because the military's got one?
Well, yeah, yeah. I think it's fine. I mean, you look at Jefferson to the ship. Look at Jefferson's letter to the ship about them having cannons to prevent pirates.
So you think it'd be okay?
I think it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with you if you can afford it. I don't think there's as long as you're not a
and
danger
can
to
shoot
anybody
it,
else.
But you can shoot it whenever you feel like it out of your yard.
No, I mean if it's on your property and you're not affecting anyone else, then I think you should be
think
able
that's
to.
okay?
Yeah, I think it's okay. I mean, it doesn't. If you own 600 acres and you can build a bunker that can withstand a cannonball shot, or a tank shot fire.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
All right, you have 600 acres, right? And
Uh-huh.
you got a bunker. So you think it's okay to have a nuclear missile or a bomb on your property?
I don't.
You got plenty of space. You could blow it up. It won't affect anybody.
Right. I mean, if you, I mean, it depends on the instance, but I don't think that. But when you look at when you look at conflicts, when you look at insurgencies and conflicts, it's not big arms that wins. In insurgencies, most of the time it's small arms.
Well, a lot of times it's all technology now.
Well, yeah, some of it's technology.
We're fighting a computer war, a cyber war.
Well, yeah, we fight cyber wars more than we fight.
Yeah.
We fight cyber wars more.
Okay,
than we
I'm
fight.
just throwing it out there. I'm not saying I'm against it totally, but what I'm saying is, I think it's ridiculous for some people to have weapons that the military has too.
But I don't think prevention of a 30 round clip is gonna decrease.
But it could, why that person's reloading, that might be a chance to rush the person.
But a reload doesn't take that long.
I'm not saying it'll ever work, but I'm just saying you cut the odds down.
I don't think so. Statistically, you don't. Statistically,
if they could only get their hands on a 6-round clip, and then they have to pop another clip in, that might be a second that saves.
I mean, yeah, life. That could be a window. That could be a window with somebody with a CPL.
You don't know. We don't know that, but I'm just saying there's a window that wasn't there earlier.
Yeah, that's I will concede that there's a window, but I don't think that it's necessarily going to preclude the idea of preventing just as many lives.
What do you think about the bumper stock thing where the bullets just keep flying?
Well, I
out?
mean, the automatic weapons are illegal. Semi-automatic weapons are not illegal. Automatic weapons are illegal. So taking a device
should this be manufactured anymore? You think this bumper stock?
I don't think it should, but that doesn't. But that's not going to stop it from being manufactured, because if anybody knows anything about how semi-automatic rifles and semantic
Well, it can
weapons
always be
work,
modified.
you can always modify it yourself.
Right.
I mean, it's
But
not
I don't
that
think it's something you
hard.
should just be able to buy.
No, I don't think you should be able to just buy bumper stocks or
But
something
this guy
like
in
that.
Las Vegas was a licensed
stocks.
arm dealer and was able to get one.
Yeah, I mean,
So I just don't think they
he
should
got
be
one.
available at all.
He got one, and he shouldn't have. But him taking something that's legal, adding a device to it, and making it illegal is illegal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I don't have a problem with the military having that.
Well, but I mean, the military is the first line of defense.
Right. They should have whatever
They should have whatever they need to instill fear among our enemies. I don't.
Well, if we got attacked, let's say that the U.S. got attacked by a foreign power. So everybody's going to pick up arms if they have them.
Oh yeah.
Everybody. I will, and because we're defending our homeland.
Right.
In that situation, then I'll take whatever weapon I can get my hands on.
But that's the big reason we don't get invaded is because all these countries that want to invade us know that they have to deal with just as many guns as there are citizens.
Well, what about this thing now, though, that China or Russia's got that some weapon that they can shoot at us we have no defense against?
What do I think about that, or what?
Well, you're just saying that we have enough weapons that nobody will mess with us, but now they have.
I mean, that takes it to wipe out a whole country.
You're talking about conventional war.
I'm talking about conventional invasion.
Right, a conventional where they actually land troops.
Right. So if
they're shooting missiles, that becomes back to cyberspace and technology that will stop those missiles.
That's not if they start shooting missiles. That's not cyber warfare.
Yeah, but if they program it so that our missiles can't override they can override our missiles, so we can't shoot back at them.
Yeah, they could do that theoretically. Okay, let's say that's true. So if they were to attack, that takes a significant amount of resources to almost nuke the entire country.
Oh, I agree.
What I mean?
No.
So, but the thing is if they launch one missile even at Hawaii, or even at an outreach outpost in Alaska.
Yeah, where they actually pushed the wrong button the other day.
Yeah, and so if they launch one missile at something in the United States, how fast the United States responds and how swiftly and how strongly, they wouldn't stand a chance. Because I mean, like North Korea shot one bullet across the South Korean border, and South Korea bombed them for 4 hours. They shot 88 cannons at them, for 4 hours. So, and then not to mention that the United States has the capability of invading North Korea should any conflict arise. If they even cost a life in South Korea or an American life, we're going to invade them.
But if North Korea shoots a nuclear missile at South Korea, we only have 6 seconds to respond.
Right, you have 6 seconds to respond, but then you've got all the United States Navy, the navies around. I mean, you've got enough time to you don't only have 6 seconds to respond to the impending missile that's coming, but at the same time, the response to the missile landing is the deadly force that we would use. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do.
We're getting off topic.
We're gonna be but in a way, it's not, because this is nation's responsibility, and it's responsibility. Like we're going back to the shootings and stuff. How much responsibility do we have as citizens to stop someone because they're not being responsible enough for their actions? Should we be more responsible in dealing with it and be more proactive?
I definitely think we should, and I think that's the breakdown of communities. You see the breakdown of communities a lot. So with Sutherland Springs, that's a small town. Everybody knew each other. A lot of people knew who the shooter was. You know, so you got that situation where it does fall on the responsibility of the community. It does. I'm not saying it all falls on the responsibility of the community, but some of it does. Some of it does fall on the responsibility of the community to know what's going on around them. It's not just in terms of responding to other human beings in tragedy. It's also responding to tragedies like Harvey. You and I both went through Harvey.
Yes, we did.
And so we live in an area that that is affected by hurricanes, and so the if somebody's in trouble, I believe that I think it's up to, if you are able to do something, you should be able to do something, and like I don't have a boat. I don't have a means of going out and rescuing people in water. But what I did was I went and I played video games for 12 hours and I raised $750 for the Red Cross, because that's what I thought I could do. And I thought that was a productive use of my time. And I think if I had a boat, Mrs. Lotus probably wouldn't have let me go out and try and save people, But that's what I would have wanted to do, because I wanted to do something, and I felt that it was up to me to do something for my community, and that's how playing video games and raising money and trying to get that started. You look at J.J. Watt, who raised, what was it, like over $30 million or something?
Right.
No, it wasn't 30 million. It was like $150 million.
It was a lot.
It was a lot of money for Harvey relief. You look at somebody like that who's proactively doing something and has a responsibility within the community to do something, and he's a figurehead of the community. He's a figurehead of Houston. He's a figurehead of the Houston Texans. I mean, he did something about it. He used his position to do something for good.
Right.
And I think, and that's a good use of personal responsibility. And me raising my measly $750, that's still a good use of my personal responsibility, because I did something. And I'm not saying that was a perfect productive use of my time, but I did something what I thought was best, and of the resources that I had available to me.
Right.
But I also went around and checked on all of our neighbors to make sure.
You checked on me.
I checked on you. I did.
And I gave you milk.
You did, and we were very grateful. And so, I went around and checked all our neighbors to make sure they were okay. I made sure they had water. Mrs. Lotus and I had plenty of water, so we were going to offer it to people that didn't have water. Our power never went out, and our internet never went out. So I was thankful for that, and that's part of the reason why I did what I did. And, but my coworker, he went out onto a bass fishing boat, and they went around and saved about 5 people.
That's awesome.
And so when I heard about him doing that, that's what triggered in my mind to do something on my end. And it's like, I don't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And so I did the first thing that came to my head,
Well, I had just got my wife back from rehabilitation. And so I wasn't able to really take care of her. So I got her in a situation where she was in the hospital. And that was a responsibility for me to, at least no matter what happened to me here, she was going to be safe at that hospital.
Right.
So I had peace of mind during Harvey that she's in a much better place than something happening here, and I wouldn't be able to take care of her.
Right. And that's a certain level of personal responsibility that you had, because your wife was in need, and there is clearly a situation that she was not fit to take the responsibility of herself on herself.
No.
There was no way, So I think that there's multiple layers of personal responsibility that goes along here, and I think you're right. I think that there is a certain amount of responsibility that falls onto people within the community. There's a certain amount of personal responsibility that falls onto people within people that are close to you, and there's a certain amount of personal responsibility that falls onto law enforcement, and and everybody should be held to some extent accountable, even if that's no punishment from the government, or no punishment from the citizens, from the people. It's still you feeling guilty about it. I think that's your punishment.
Right.
If you feel guilty about it, then that's your punishment.
Well,
it's definitely your punishment.
Just like the shooting down in Florida, the fellow students knew this guy and knew he was going to be a problem, and his parents, his mother, and the cops had been over to his place several times.
Yeah.
Okay, so I the thing is, in schools nowadays, it seems like the kids just do whatever they want. They're disruptive, and the teachers can't control them. And then the parents come in and they start berating the teachers for not controlling their kid, or teaching them what they need to be teaching them. And my thing is, the parents should take a more proactive.
I agree.
Thing, and I'll tell you several reasons why. One thing is by not paying attention to your kids, there's a big disconnect, and the disconnect happens when the parents nowadays are on their phones, texting people or looking at stuff on their phones, and their kids are running amok. They're not, and they're doing this. The kids are doing the same thing,
Right.
and there's that disconnect where they're not sitting down and helping them with their homework, or seeing how their day's going, or recognizing if they've got a problem because they're parenting in cruise control. So then
Right.
they need to take the time to make sure those kids get their assignments done. They're not disrupting classrooms, and they're getting all this done. And the big picture is if parents would take the time to spend time with their kids, then they could see the big picture. And the big picture is, do you want those kids living with you for the rest of your life?
Right.
Make them responsible to take care of themselves, and then get them out the door.
Right. Right. Yes, backseat it's not backseat parenting because backseat
It kind
parenting
of is.
well, yeah, it kind of is. It's and shifting that you bring up a point. You bring up a point.
It's ignoring.
It's
and it's the parents' responsibility to help the kids be responsible, so that you don't see shootings at YouTube. Then
right. And
I mean that was a whole different set. She was complaining about what the way they edited her videos or something. Okay, but if she would, it started at home. I'm sorry, but how that kid was raised into an adult had an effect. And if she was raised perfectly and still had some issues, she should have talked to somebody first, or she should have. I mean, I understand people get frustrated, and this will be another topic for us when we do our customer service thing.
Right.
But they get frustrated and they want to lash out. Well, that obviously is not the way to do it.
No, it's definitely not the way to do it.
So that's the time where you've got to have that support group so you can lash out with them and they can help you. But if you don't have that support, like the parents watching, raising their kids and still being there, like you're still close to your parents.
Yeah.
Okay, so even though you're out and you're married, you're still close to your parents, and you still have that support system.
Right.
And she didn't have that. I'm not condoning what she did, but you have to look at all the factors. And a lot of people are just narrow-minded and say, "Well, I saw her picture and she looked like a terrorist because she was foreign looking. I figured it was a terrorist act." I go,
Right.
"Well, you're stereotyping, okay?" But I'm just saying, we don't know all the circumstances. And again, I do not condone what she did, but help us understand stuff so that future shootings, we might be able to get a handle on them quicker.
Right, and there is I think parents wanting to shift blame on how they raise their kids because either A, they think their kids can do no wrong,
yeah,
or B, they don't think that there's a flaw in how they're parenting their kid.
Well, of course, that happens all the time. You're right.
And so, like my parents is so funny. And my mom's going to start laughing, I know, because she listens to the podcast. It's so funny, because I was talking to my mom about the first episode, and she was just cracking up about it. But anyway, so my mom always had the stance of she will let us explain what happened at school. She'll give us that moment in the sun of, okay, what happened? But she still punished us because we got in trouble at school. Because the school obviously decided that we had gotten in trouble and we had done something to get ourselves into trouble. And so she's going to side with the school because in a lot of instances she's going to side with the school because odds are she's not around me. She wasn't around me 24/7. So, she's definitely going to believe somebody else. Even if my perception of the story is correct, it's still, you messed up. You didn't follow the rules. And I don't think people understand the concept that rules, and I hate that people use the rules are meant to be broken saying, and it's like, no, there are some rules that are not meant to be. Rules are rules because if we didn't have a society with laws and rules, everybody would just be wailing on each other.
Yeah, we'd be running amok.
Right. And I just don't.
Your mother,
I agree. I think that there's.
Your mother respected teachers and she respected the school, so she was in simpatico with that.
Right.
But But a lot of parents today, it's like, oh, it's the school's fault. It's the teacher's fault. My kid, like you said, my kid can do no wrong. They live in a perfect world, and their parenting skills are awesome. And it's not always the case. And in the day, I was the same as your mother with my kids. You know, we that was we were what I want to say. We were like our parents were. We when I got in trouble at school, my dad always took the side of the school, no matter what I told him, no matter what happened. Okay, and I did the same thing with my kids growing up. But I think our society today has changed a lot. Now, parents will get real defensive and be in a corner for their kids on some things, but usually with law enforcement and the schools, I'm not saying you shouldn't believe what your kids tell you. You should be in their corner, but I understand that when you hear that authoritative voice from either the police or the school or your church or whatever, you have to take a moment and see that before you start. Like you're going to yell at your kids if you hear something, but at the end of the day, if your parents will still be in your corner if they feel like you're being mistreated, they will. Because if you're constantly getting picked on at school by your teachers, there's a problem. There's a pattern. And if you're a real good parent, you're going to want to know, why is my son always being singled out for this? Or if the police are always hassling you, like, oh, well, we're picking up Lotus again because he's doing something. He did it, and your parents are going, why are you always getting picked up? And it starts becoming a pattern. One-time things are like, I'm going to side with the authority figure because they're right. I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say. But if it becomes a pattern, that's a parent's, in my opinion, responsibility to be in their kid's corner. Like if you get in a fight with another kid, you think your parents are going to yell at you because got in a fight with that other kid? They're going to be going after that kid and his parents because you got in a fight with them, even though you could be in the wrong. The first reaction to most parents is, "Oh, well, I'm going to go over and talk to his parents. He beat up my kid," and it's like, but your kid started it, but you're not hearing that,
right? So, I mean, like there is my parent. The point, I think, the whole point for me was that my parents wanted me to respect authority,
right?
And
you should
realize that I am not always going to be in control of. I'm in control of what I do, but I am not in control of the laws and the rules that I'm forced to live with. And so my parents still have the my house, my rules stance. So if I go over there, it's their house, it's their rules.
Right.
They have a dry household. I prefer the occasional brew, but they have a dry household. So whenever I go over there, I don't take.
They make the rules.
I don't take alcohol over there.
And if they come to your house and you want to drink, that's your prerogative.
That's my prerogative. But I mean, I don't when they come over out of respect.
Sure.
It's just there is a certain amount of respect for authority that kids are not being taught, and I don't think that's a good thing that parents go after authority figures and all this other stuff that saying it's their fault. It's no, these authority figures are enforcing the rules. But going back to consistent over and over and over and over again, I think if like for my parents, just to give you an example, in when I went from elementary school to junior high, in the area I was raised, there was no middle school. It was, well, I mean, middle school is junior high, but there was no like in between from elementary to, it was just, you went from elementary to junior high and then high school. And so from elementary to junior high, they had the pre-AP and AP programs, where, you got on the advanced path and stuff like that. And the teacher constantly recommended, oh, just put him in the regular classes. Put Lotus in the regular classes. And, because I didn't do very well in 5th grade. And that's because in 4th grade, I wasn't being challenged, and my mom recognized that. So in 5th grade was hard because I was lazy in 4th grade. And so I was lazy in 4th grade, and then I thought I could be lazy in 5th grade, and I couldn't. And so that carried over. So I wasn't lazy in the rest of my schooling because I was being challenged.
Right.
And so my parents decided against teacher advice. Even though the teacher insisted on it, they decided against teacher advice, and I mean that's not that's not a good, that's not a clear example of where it happens over and over again. But she did recommend multiple times, don't put him in classes that he
Right,
can't
right,
do.
right.
You
So, yeah,
know,
teachers aren't perfect either.
no, and teachers aren't perfect either, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they are. I think that there's a certain amount of, because my parents constantly kept in contact with my teachers.
Sure, sure.
And they started backing off when I started getting into college, and they definitely, I mean, they had no contact with my professors. My professors weren't
Yeah.
interested.
Right.
Even my dual credit classes I took in high school, which is essentially a college class in a high school setting, he wouldn't talk to my parents about stuff because he's like, this is a college class. I'm not here to talk to your
Right.
parents.
But if you,
And
but yeah, and I totally agree with what you're saying. The parents should back up their kids when they should be backed up. But here's another thought on a shooting down in Florida. That kid had multiple visits from the cops. Okay, and they never acted on it. And the parents, I don't know anything about them, but here's some scenarios. One is they could have yelled at their kid every time the cops came and said, "Don't do that again," or "Quit acting like that," and then go on about their merry business. But after several repeating times, then the scenario should have been, why is he still doing this? Why are the cops coming? We need to we
yeah,
need to. But they probably did just said, you have to do this, or they could have been the opposite. Another scenario could have been where the cops come and they're yelling at the cops. Well, my kid could do no wrong. I don't know why you guys keep coming out here. Get out of here. So
yeah,
there's so many different scenarios, but the bottom line is they didn't take the responsibility to do something about their son. And if they did take the responsibility, it didn't go far enough.
yeah. And I think, and even the, I mean, but there is limitations to what neighbor, and I think the neighbors did the right thing of reporting all of this stuff as much as they
Right,
could.
right. But sometimes
But
you can do so much. Like I got my oldest son. He's been in and out of so much trouble, and it's like you just wash your hands of it. You've tried everything you can to help him,
uh-huh.
and it's like you almost give up. So you get to that point, but at the end of the day, he's still your son, and you still love him, and you still got to do whatever you can for him. But you got to draw the line. You can't just keep getting sucked into this because it wears on you.
Yeah,
And so because it wears on you, you've got to step away and say, I've done everything I can do. Okay?
uh-huh.
Now you have to take the responsibility. Like in his case, you have to be responsible for your actions. I can't keep helping you.
Uh-huh.
You got to pay the consequences. So I can understand where a parent could get frustrated, and it's like they want to be responsible parents, but they're they're just wore out.
Right. Right. I find all of this very, very interesting because it's multiple layers of accountability and personal responsibility gone wrong in a lot of these instances.
Right.
And like with the YouTuber thing, there's a different way to handle that.
Oh, sure. A lot of different ways.
That is not the way to handle it. And I mean, you go you can take some actions like this woman did, and that's terrible and that's wrong.
Right. Right.
Or you can go the actions of the way PragerU handles it, and they sue YouTube. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's just
Or they start blogging on Facebook or something about how bad YouTube is.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
go to the
Yeah.
competitor.
I mean, yeah, that doesn't kill anyone.
right.
It may. I mean, uh, if you bad. I mean, people get in fights over arguments, and you and I both know this on like Facebook, especially liberal and conservative people. If they post something, there's always a big fight,
Right.
and and a lot of times it's with your relatives and your friends. It's not just people that are like, I don't know this person, but
Yeah.
but
Unless it's on like a group page.
right. But I mean, sometimes these people get so riled up that they get physical.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's kind of stuff can happen. It can escalate. You're right. There are alternatives that she could have used to vent her frustration or her anger. But then again, if it keeps festering, it's just going to come back full circle.
Yeah, and I was talking about this. Believe it or not, I was talking about something like this with a coworker yesterday. Is that people get it in there because he asked me, how can somebody do this? And I said, okay, well, I gave him the example. I said, you ever get the feeling of you get so mad at somebody you want to punch somebody, you know?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, I haven't lately. I said, okay, if you haven't lately or if you haven't at all, you will. I was like, you'll get to a point where you want to punch somebody. And that's a mental thought in your head. That's not an action.
Right.
There's no consequences for you thinking that.
Right.
There's nothing
right.
wrong.
As long as you just think it.
And I said there's also nothing necessarily wrong with you thinking that as long as you don't act on it.
Right.
Right. And I said, but you look at people like this. So you look at the Parkland shooter, you look at this, you look at that. I was like, these people, rather than figuring out a way to deal with it, like I do, or you do, or my, in this instance, my coworker, I said, you probably play video games to relieve your stress. He's like, yeah, I do. I said, I do the same thing. I play video games to relieve stress. I drink a beer to relieve stress sometimes because that does relieve stress.
Sure.
You know? And so I said, okay, but for people that don't do that, there are people that don't do that, or that people that, and there are people that dwell on it. And so then you get into this mental feedback loop, and you start dwelling on it more and more and more, and so it festers, and then it burrows into your skull, and so you're constantly thinking about this, and you're constantly trying to do this.
You think everybody's going after you.
And then all of a sudden you start getting paranoid about it because you're constantly in that mental feedback loop. And so then you think everybody's against you.
Yep.
And so then you're trying to figure out the mental state gets so bad that you want to do something about it. And then and like I was telling you before, some of this falls on, I'm not saying it all falls on the media because all falls on the press because the press have the right to report it.
Well, sure.
But
and they enjoy reporting bad stuff.
And they enjoy reporting bad stuff because that sells. People want to know.
Exactly. It sells.
And so
that's why they're quick to the story, and it's not always accurate because they want to be the first one out there with the story.
And they want to beat and places
that's another
topic.
Another subject.
And they want to beat the social media to it and stuff too. But I just think that you get to a certain point where this person that has this feedback loop is going over and over and over again. It's festering in their head, and it's just ready to rile up, and it's just going and going and going and going. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, they see an idea, they get an idea in their head, and it's there. And then they decide, okay, well, how am I going to do this?
Right.
You know, and so then they start watching this on TV and stuff like that, and all of a sudden it's in their head, and it's in their head to decide to do this. And I said, that's how it happens. You know, and he was like, and that was a mental breakthrough for him. Is like he's like, wow. He's like, wow. I said there's probably a mental disorder that goes along with something like that, but generally it's associated with depression and mental illness and drugs and all this other stuff. You know, like there's a lot of things that go. Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things.
You know something that's. I'll just throw this out there. Like you said, we've all been there.
Yeah.
If anybody says they haven't, they're lying.
Right.
We've all been there. One thing that helps me diffuse a situation like that, well, a few things. I'll do something else, obviously. Like you said, maybe have a drink or just mellow out, try to think about it rationally. And if it's festering, you know what the biggest thing that helps me, and it's not necessarily going to happen, but if I've got a problem with somebody, there's a couple of things that I can do. I can either talk to them. If they don't want to talk to me, that's fine. But it's the old situation where I can't fix it if I don't know what's broke. And if they don't want to talk about it, that's their call. The other thing is, if that person that I got a problem with may or may not know that they have a problem with me, if they show me an act of kindness or do something nice for me, my wall goes way down. And because that wall is going down, all these bad thoughts I had about this person start dissipating. Yeah. Because they did something nice for me.
Right. And
or they treated me really nice.
It's very reflective in I'm not saying that marriage can get some marriages can get very, very, very hostile, but
sure.
It's also reflective in marriage too.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I mean,
you let a problem fester too
much.
It's
like I was married 35 years. Do we have a perfect marriage? No. Who does? But like my wife, there'd be things that would tick me off, but I didn't say anything. I just let it fester and get mad. Then the next day, or even sometime later that day, she's fixing me a really nice meal, or doing something for me, and it's like all that hostility just went away.
Right. Yeah.
Because some people can't let go of that hostility.
No,
No matter what you do. Like if you and I were mad at each other, and I did all this extra stuff to can I make amends, even though I wasn't in the wrong, you could still be mad. I mean,
yeah.
but with me, if somebody that I'm mad at does a kind thing for me or helps me out, in my situation, I will like let a lot of stuff go.
Yeah, and there are some things that Mrs. Lotus does that I get furious. And it's and I what I do in order to avoid further harm to both her and myself, I separate myself from her and I allow myself time to process. Yeah, and it's not and she doesn't like that. She wants to solve it right then and there, and I'm very much the same way. I would love to solve it right then and there, but I'm so infused with emotion and anger that I just I'm going to come to the wrong solution, and I don't think it's not productive if we don't come to a good rational solution.
Right.
I just there's just so much that is
we've only hit on 3 topics now, but there's so much stuff to talk about. The topics that we've already covered that we could always address. We could
always do more episodes. Always. Moving on and wrapping up. I think there is personal responsibility on every level with situations like this. I think with not situations like this, but with these types of tragedies and even tragedies beyond our control that happen, there's a certain amount of personal responsibility that goes along with the community, your neighbors, and that's part of the reason why we started this podcast is to talk about that we're just your average people that live right next to you, potentially could live right next to you.
Right.
It's just the idea.
We're not experts.
No, we're not experts.
We have opinions,
we have opinions that we don't claim to be experts. And I certainly hope that people understand that this is more of a practical, common sense perspective. I hate using the word common sense.
But and if our facts are a little out of kilter, we believe it's true.
Yeah, it's there's a certain set of common ground that you and I can find, and I think that there's a certain amount of personal responsibility that goes along with the community, the people around you, the law enforcement, the national enforcement. Yep. I just don't see how I don't see how. I see how it can all go wrong. And I can see how people want to neglect it because personal responsibility is a difficult thing. Being accountable for yourself is a very difficult thing.
Right.
And putting yourself through turmoil is a very difficult thing to do. Particularly, you don't want to do it. You don't want to. People are lazy. People in general are lazy, and they don't want to do things. And
well, you know what? Technology's made us lazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
And people don't get outdoors. When I was a kid, we always had neighborhood football games or basketball games or baseball games. And kids were out playing.
Yeah.
They weren't sitting around playing video games all day.
Yeah. Yeah. And but is there anything you wanted to say before we wrap up?
No, I'm good. And you asked me about our next topic.
Yeah. What's our next topic?
I'm thinking what might be interesting based on current events is our take on military being used at home.
Military at home.
At home, because with the president just ordering troops to guard the border until the wall gets built, that might be something. We don't have to necessarily talk about that.
I don't know how long that episode's going to be because I am not very brushed up on that topic.
You'll start thinking of stuff.
I might start thinking of stuff.
Just to let our listeners out there know, we don't have anything scripted. We don't have anything planned, and we have nothing in advance that we're going to talk about. We just sit down and start talking.
Right. Yeah. It's one of us comes up with a topic. That person that comes up with the topic does the intro.
Yeah.
And then we just start talking and we start.
Yeah. But I got a feeling it's going to flow for you. It will.
Yeah. We'll
And
see
it
what
does.
happens.
It does. Like I said, we don't have anything scripted. We just start talking, and then we play off of each other, I think, so well that we come up with more things to talk about.
Right. Well, anyway, so this has been the personal responsibility and accountability episode for the Socratic Neighbors podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Socratic Podcast, and you can also email us at SocraticNeighbors@gmail.com. And you can also find us on iTunes, Google Play, and Podomatic. We also have a YouTube channel, which I think once listener Tyler comes into town, then we'll on YouTube we'll actually have something interesting. I think once the places we start talking about, I'll put pictures and stuff of those places.
That'd be good.
So that way our YouTube viewers, they're not listeners, they're viewers. Our YouTube viewers can actually have something.
He's very well traveled. He's been all over the world. So.
Yeah. But listener Tyler, email us if you've gotten Quick Carl's ticket. He's the one that comes in with the funds, not me.
Yeah, I don't. That's gonna happen.
So, but anyway, this has been a very. I think this has been a very productive episode. I'm glad I'm glad we diverted from.
Well, I think it's good that we address some of the
dogs.
Current. Our dogs are having fun.
Hey.
I think it's good that we don't always have to stay on topic if we've already picked something because of something that's going on.
Yeah, I think, and that's the point of this podcast is that we don't have to
But
stick
if it's a
to the
slow
same
news week,
topic.
then we can pick our subject.
Yeah, and I look forward to the customer service episode. I'm sure the FCC censor that we have in place is going to go a little bit nuts. I certainly plan to use it rather liberally, and we'll avoid. I think when we do our customer service episode, we'll avoid talking about We'll talk about particular companies, but we won't use those companies' names. I think we'll use abstract.
Right.
Because
and since I've done customer service for so many years, I'll definitely have stories on the other side.
Yeah. I'm sure you will. I mean, my industry is a very customer service oriented industry as well, so I got plenty of stories.
Good.
But anyway, again, email us at SocraticNeighbors@gmail.com if you're interested. Find us on iTunes, Google Play, and we will catch you next time.
Next time.
All right. Have a good day.